On the day the twins were born, the Brel family received a prophecy that a life blessed by God would come into the world. And their younger daughter, Nakshia, proved these words to be true. She grew up to be a beautiful girl with lovely silvery hair and a noble smile. Everyone around her adored her, respected her, and tried to take care of her. As a child, she showed special abilities. Even then, she had the ability to control water and its elements. Everyone around her called her the girl loved by the gods. But her sister, Tanasha Brelov, was the opposite of her. Even outwardly, she was completely different. Her hair was black and dark, as if smeared with dirty water. Her face was lifeless. No one had ever seen a smile on her face. Her eyes did not shine with joy like her sister's. And she did not possess extraordinary abilities like her sister. How could twins be so different? Everyone talked about it. One of them was as if blessed by the gods, while the other was her complete opposite. People began to wonder if they were really sisters. No one could believe that the gods would treat the older girl so badly. She received nothing from her patrons. Everything went to her younger sister. People were talking about it just before the prince's birthday. It couldn't help but become a popular topic of gossip among the aristocrats who had gathered for the celebration. And if Tanasia couldn't stand their criticism and decided to leave the banquet hall, they would laugh at her even louder. The girl entered the hall. She turned to a stranger who was talking about her, but suddenly fell silent. Tanasia asked her to repeat what she had just said about her. The stranger blushed and said she hadn't said anything. Tanasia said that she had overheard the conversation at the point where they were talking about the blessings of the gods that had been bestowed upon one person, and the other person was left with nothing at all. She was also interested in what they were saying about the second person. The girl asked the stranger what she wanted to tell people. She began to justify herself, saying that she was just waiting for the right time to show her abilities and skills in the future. Tanisha said that she didn't allow anyone to make her the subject of discussion, and she was not at all thrilled that people were talking about her. The girl asked them to stop this senseless and meaningless chatter. The dark-haired girl addressed everyone present. She loudly and firmly ordered everyone to listen to her. Tanisha warned that if anyone dared to say anything about her behind her back, she would simply tear their mouth off. She would not even look at the origin or status of the person spreading the gossip. Those present were surprised by what they heard. The girl showed character and willpower. Tanisha would not let anyone make fun of her. Tanya thought about how she had ended up in the world of the book. The last thing she remembered about her past life was when she quit her boring job and decided to travel. But her plane never reached its destination. There was an explosion in the cabin immediately after takeoff. That was when she died and was transported to this world. The feeling was very strange. It was difficult to describe. When Tunisia opened her eyes, she saw servants leaning over her, trying to revive her. The girl realized that she was in someone else's body. However, she was very surprised by who she had become. The doctor said that she had fallen from a horse at full gallop. Surviving such an accident was a miracle. And then the girl realized that she was in the body of Tanasia, Nokisha's sister, and they both belonged to the Brel family. Suddenly, she remembered a famous novel she had read in her past life. The book was called Beloved Holidays. The plot was based on two contrasting characters, two sisters who were completely different. The younger sister, Nokisha, was loved by everyone and highly respected for her natural talent and beauty. The older sister, Tanasia, was constantly compared to her younger sister, but she had no extraordinary abilities gifted by the gods. Tanasia therefore always felt like an outsider in this society, and the time came when she wanted to have everything her sister had. She wondered why God had given her sister everything she needed and had neglected her. The girl wondered why she didn't have even a fraction of what Nokisha had, and if Tanasia had been born first, maybe she would have had everything, and her sister would have been the outsider. Thus, the older sister became a thief and the antagonist of the novel. And so it happened that the girl who died in a plane crash found herself in Tanasia's body. The shock of the situation was very great for her. Perhaps it was because of her fascination with novels. Despite everything, the girl was happy because she found herself in the body of a noblewoman and aristocrat. But the realization of reality came very quickly. She couldn't go back to where she was. She definitely didn't want to return to her past life. In that reality, she had no reason to exist. She didn't even have a family with whom she could simply live in that cruel and unjust world. And here, the situation wasn't so bad. Tanasia was beautiful. She looked good in everything she wore. The heroine of the novel constantly compared herself to her sister, which made her life hell. But the girl now had no intention of doing that. She did not envy her sister's appearance, character, or abilities. Tanasia was a young, beautiful, and rich girl, the daughter of a prominent aristocratic family. She had the opportunity to enjoy luxury. But those easy and carefree days did not last long. The servants began to whisper that Lady Tanasia had changed a lot after falling from her horse. People began to disappear in the neighborhood. There were rumors of cruel experiments. Tanasia overheard their conversations, which were accompanied by rumors about the Kaula Empire. The maid was frightened, but the girl asked her to repeat what she had said about the Kaula Empire. The maid told her about the creation of weapons from living humans. This year, the number of people who have disappeared without a trace is much higher than in the past 5 years. Rumors say that they have all been kidnapped by emissaries of the Kaul Empire. But these are just rumors that no one takes seriously. But right now, Tanasia remembered a part of the story that she had forgotten before, lost in the joy of her rich life. At this very moment, the Arvan Empire, her homeland, is entering a bloody war with the Kala Empire. According to the story, Tanasia was supposed to die soon, and she would die at the hands of the novel's main villain, Ascon. He was the only one who survived the cruel experiments on human subjects. After the experiments, he became the strongest man in the world, Tanasia reassured herself. She still had time to come up with a plan. Ascon escaped from the laboratory at the age of 15. His clothes were so torn and shabby that he was mistaken for a slave and sold into servitude. Since Tanasia and Ascon were the same age, he must have escaped that year. The girl asked the servants where the local slave market was. She needed to get there immediately. The aristocrat's reaction confused the girls. The barrel daughter said there was no time for explanations. She ordered a carriage to be brought. But at that moment, a young man entered the room. He said that the bath for the mistress was ready, as she had ordered. She recognized the young man as the main antagonist. He had deep golden eyes and a tattoo in an ancient language that wrapped around his neck like a snake. The girl was afraid to ask the servants what his name was. However, you cannot escape the truth. The boy said his name was Askin. Tanasia couldn't understand what he was doing at the estate. This wasn't in the original story. According to the plot, the boy had escaped from the laboratory. But there was no mention of him becoming a servant in the Brel family. However, the novel was unfinished, so it was very difficult to find out the details. Therefore, it was difficult to establish the truth and the sequence of events regarding what had happened. And should she now be happy that she had found her enemy so quickly? Askin asked if he could be free if she didn't need him anymore. The girl didn't immediately understand what he wanted from her. But then she allowed him to leave her room. The boy's reaction was incomprehensible to her. He seemed to be avoiding her. One of the maids asked if Tanasia was really going to let the boy go just like that. The girl did not understand what she was talking about. The maid said that Askan had left earlier than usual. The Brel's eldest daughter was confused. The maid's words could mean that Tanasia had done something with the young servant earlier. It was necessary to find out all the details of what they had been doing. She said that her memories were clouded. Falling from a horse at full gallop was not something a young girl could easily forget. Gaps in her memory appeared regularly, and some memories disappeared altogether. Fortunately, they did not contain any important information about the past. Tanasia said she would not be angry when the girls were ready to tell her the whole truth about what had happened between her and Askan. On the contrary, she would be grateful for their help in restoring her memory. One of the maids said that from the very beginning, the young mistress had disliked Askan. She often spoke unkindly about his black hair. Tanasia told her to carry buckets of water for the bath, even though there was a tap. And when she was in a very bad mood from early in the morning, she used a whip to punish an annoying servant for his stupidity and carelessness. The girl understood why the boy hated her. But the question remained of how he could return to the Kaul Empire. She couldn't send him there herself. In the original novel, the boy escaped from the laboratory on his own and made his way to the Arvan Empire. But one day he was caught and sent back to the laboratory. Tanasia couldn't remember the reasons why, but it was worth changing her attitude towards the boy to eliminate the possibility of revenge on his part, which was undesirable. The maid asked if they should postpone their visit to the slave market until tomorrow. Tanasia understood that she had no other chance to get a new life. Therefore, it was necessary to put everything in order immediately. That night, she had her first dream since arriving in the new world. In her dream, she saw how she found Askan at the slave market. The tattoos in an ancient language that wrapped around the boy's neck were hard to miss. The boy's body was covered with magical formulas, which also attracted attention. By writing formulas directly on his body, they wanted to turn him into a living weapon. These were traces of experiments performed on the boy. Scientists had endowed the body of an ordinary person with extraordinary abilities that were dangerous if control over them was lost. And then Tanasia realized that in this way, she could also gain power that would rival that of her sister. Nokasia had learned to control water and perform various metamorphoses with this substance. However, the formulas and ancient inscriptions could allow her to master powers that would surpass even her sister's skills. This led Tanasia to begin studying the slave's body. Such research was illegal, but the girl tried to keep everything a secret. The first thing she did was to find out what Askan was capable of. In the dark basements of the family castle, the girl tortured and mocked the slave in every way, trying to provoke him into using his power. She was sure that Askan was no ordinary man. She demanded that he show her his strength. The boy steadfastly endured all the abuse inflicted on his body. The girl sometimes lost control of herself and got too carried away. But once she noticed that the test subject's body had become as hard as steel, Tanasia realized that this was Askan's special ability. She also understood the potential of such a body in combat with humans. She could defeat dozens, if not hundreds, of people. The girl was completely satisfied. It remained to find out how long this effect would last. The boy asked her to stop. The picture became so unpleasant that Tanasia herself wanted to wake up so as not to see the past abuse of the man. The dream frightened the girl. It was definitely a memory of what had happened before she moved into her new body. She wasn't just interrogating Askan. She was once again tormenting the boy, experimenting on him to find out what he was capable of. And if the story turned out to be true, then the possibility that she had sold the boy to the enemy empire was very high. And this meant that Askan would want to take revenge on his tormentor. If the plot did not change, she would simply die. Tanasia decided to atone for her guilt at any cost. The girl entered the room where Askan was. They were left alone. The boy asked what his mistress wanted from him. The aristocrat only now noticed how cautiously he was behaving. She remembered her dream again and understood why he was behaving this way toward her. But from this moment on, everything would change. Tanasia said that she would not ask anything unusual of him. However, from today on, he would live in the mansion. He asked if he understood correctly what his mistress wanted to tell him. The girl said that from now on he had nothing to worry about. Tanasia decided to finish writing the novel on her own and change the plot to a more positive one. She said that from this day forward, he would also become her personal servant. Refusal would not be accepted. The girl is determined to change the course of the story by any means possible and stay alive despite all the troubles that await her. The boy could not hide his surprise and hostility from his new mistress. She understood the reason for his attitude and was quite sure that he could not have acted otherwise. It is difficult to be around someone who has treated you so badly, but he simply cannot disobey her. The girl's orders were law to him. Tanasia ordered him to pack his things immediately and go with her to the palace. A room had already been prepared for him. The girl watched intently as he packed his modest belongings. She promised herself that she would change Askan's life for the better after he moved to the estate. He had to forget all his resentment towards her and her terrible treatment of him. Tanasia was impressed by how quickly the boy had packed his things. She asked if he had worn the same clothes all winter and throughout the other seasons. The boy replied in the affirmative. The girl felt very sorry for him. She also needed to rectify the situation. The aristocrat's daughter ordered the servants to find suitable clothes for the boy before the move. She invited a seamstress especially to sew clothes for Askan. The boy insisted that it was unnecessary, but Tanasia said that her servant would not be poorly dressed. She added that from now on he should call her lady instead of mistress. She told everyone that Askan was now her personal servant. Therefore, when they were often seen together, everyone would soon get used to this state of affairs. The servants thought she was keeping him for fun. The girl saw the emotions on the servants' faces, but they were worrying for nothing. She was going to treat Askan well. To get a happy ending, she had to try hard, and Tanasia would do it. A seamstress approached her, asking when to start taking the lady's measurements. Tanasia replied that today the measurements should be taken from her servant. The woman set to work, but she was also surprised by how the mistress's attitude toward Askan had changed. Tanasia took her servant's appearance seriously. In addition to newfangled clothing designs, she suggested inviting a hairdresser to do something with the boy's hair. After all, it was stiff and unruly. When everything was finished, the hairdresser presented the servant's new look to those present. The maids and Tanasia herself were amazed at how the appearance of their longtime acquaintance had changed. He had become not just handsome, but truly an enviable gentleman. Tanasia said that the investment in Askan had paid off 100%. She ordered his clothes to be brought to his new room. After that, the girl invited the servant to have lunch with her, as she was sure that he was hungry after such an eventful day. The girl noticed that he was uncomfortable using a knife and fork, so she asked him to practice using these utensils more, because he would need them in the future, since they would mostly be eating together now. After dinner, Tanasia suggested taking a walk to help the food settle and because it would be nice to spend some time together. Although Askan was probably used to spending time with her in a different way before, the hostess watched his reaction. She did not expect his attitude to change too quickly, but treating him well and introducing him to new things might melt the ice in his heart, at least a little. But nothing worked. It seemed as if he had no feelings left at all. The girl regretted that she had taken up this matter so late. But now, she would purposefully use the slightest chance to establish contact with him. They went for a walk in the garden together. The garden was impressive in size, and it was possible to walk around it for a very long time. The network of paths could even confuse a newcomer visiting this paradise for plants for the first time. The girl pointed to 2 stumps left over from trees. You could sit on them and rest. Tanasia said that this place offered a magical view of the stars. The boy also took a look at the sky. After looking at the sky, the boy asked the hostess why she had decided to change her approach. She did not immediately understand what her companion meant. Askan said that he remembered the words about taking away Noxia's power, or, if it was impossible to do anything to her, they had to get rid of Noxa herself. But even though she asked him to do it, the young man refused to commit the crime because he did not believe in doing evil, especially to his own sister. Tanasia realized that if she couldn't get the whole picture, she couldn't plan her next move. She had to find out everything. She had to find out about his plans for his sister and everything related to her. She asked him to forgive her. Askan did not expect this. The girl said that her behavior had caused him a lot of problems. Her attitude toward him had been very bad, even worse than toward a wild animal. Therefore, Tanasia asked him to forgive her for her words and actions. The housekeeper said that after falling from her horse, it was very difficult for her to remember certain details of how she had treated Askan and how cruelly she had behaved towards him. She was very ashamed of her past, and her hatred for her sister had disappeared. She no longer wished her any harm. Now she was no longer concerned about her sister's abilities, and Tanasia asked him to forget about the task she had given him regarding Noxia. The girl promised that she would no longer bother the boy and that her behavior towards him would change dramatically. For the better, of course. Askan did not believe her words. He said that it would be easier for him if she beat him up and trampled him, as was usually the case with them. These words were very pleasant to the girl, because in fact, she did not do such terrible things to him. The boy's distrust was quite deep. The girl was very upset that none of the ways she tried to deepen their relationship had worked. She even thought about leaving everything as it was. Tanaya wondered if she could escape death by running away to some remote, lost place and living out the rest of her life there. But then she remembered Oland, the head of their aristocratic family, and thought that he would never leave her alone. Besides, it would be difficult for a 15-year-old girl to survive alone in unfamiliar lands where anything could happen. Is it possible to change one's destiny? This question had been haunting Tanaya lately. The girl was sitting in class. Her teacher, Metella, addressed her. The woman suggested that she concentrate on the task at hand and not be distracted by various trifles. But in reality, this was difficult to do, because she had not heard anything from the lesson. The girl decided to at least pretend that she was interested, but when she realized that the task was actually very simple, she calculated everything in her head. The teacher looked at her in confusion and was surprised by her quick math skills. When asked by the teacher, Tanasia showed her the way she thought was best to solve the problem. The woman was sure that her student was not gifted in math and couldn't believe that she had calculated so quickly. Metella looked at the solution with surprise and delight. She realized that it was simply brilliant. She had never doubted the girl's mathematical abilities, but this was extraordinary. She constantly praised her student. The woman emphasized that Tanasia was usually very stubborn, and it was rare to prove something to her or convince her of anything. But today, her student's efforts exceeded all expectations. It was worth developing the skills of the daughter of an aristocratic family. The teacher added books with various tasks, trying to check what her student did not know. Tanasia carefully examined the books, and when the girl said that everything was clear, Metella said that the book contained magic formulas. The peculiarity of this task was that they had not yet studied magic formulas in their lessons. This meant that the girl had a natural talent for calculating formulas and reading magical inscriptions. Tanasia said that everything in the books was familiar to her and self-explanatory. She remembered seeing magical formulas and symbols on Askan's back in her dream. She was trying to read them and understand their meaning for further experiments. Somewhere deep in her soul, she understood that before entering Tanasia's body, she had uncovered the secret of the magical formulas in Askan's tattoos. She also understood the direction in which she should continue her experiments. But Tanasia had no intention of developing her talent. She was completely focused on her relationship with Noxia. In pursuit of this goal, she was willing to sacrifice everything related to her talent. She could have wasted her entire life this way. It was worth focusing on the talent she possessed, rather than chasing after something unknown in an attempt to surpass her sister or someone else. She needed to develop her skills and abilities. The teacher said that the girl could become the best in the entire empire. Of course, that was if she didn't plan on hiding her talent. However, the head of the Brell family would be delighted to learn about his daughter's hidden talent. He would certainly provide any support necessary for the development of her talents and inclinations. Tanasia said that the woman could tell the head of the family about it. He would be happy to see her happy. The girl thought that it was really worth developing her talent and not following the storyline of her heroine. This was another chance to cheat fate. New opportunities were finally appearing on the horizon. Therefore, a feeling of hope for the better was reborn. The only thing that bothered her was that she could not reveal her secret to anyone and share her innermost thoughts. She had to find a way to deal with all her problems on her own. But this feeling still did not give her complete confidence in her abilities. She wanted to feel a kindred spirit nearby. But when she remembered everything about her heroine, everything fell into place. Someone called out to Tanasia. The voice was unmistakable. It was her sister, Noxia. She was the main character in the novel, so it was worth remembering as much as possible about her. As already mentioned, she was not an ordinary girl. Askan came to Tanaya's aid. He asked the girl if she was all right. The boy handed her a handkerchief. The girl thanked him for his help and concern. Before that, a bullet had hit the boy and his mistress. Noxia apologized and said that she did not do it on purpose. She also warned about the ball flying straight at her sister. It was strange that the respectable Noxia apologized to her ordinary sister. Tanisa wiped herself with a handkerchief handed to her by her servant. She remembered that such a scene was in the original novel. The servant asked Nokasia to show her abilities, and her sister lost control of the elements because she was nervous. The sister asked Noxia if it was really an accident. If so, she would not be offended, but she warned her not to practice in places where guests or family members were present. The servants approached the sisters and said that Noxa was not to blame and should not be punished. They took all the blame upon themselves for asking her to demonstrate her mastery of the water element. Noxa replied that she had not thought about the others. Tanaisa sternly asked if they realized their guilt. The girls replied in unison that it would not happen again. The sister added that Nokasia should not be asked to do such things anymore. Because of her gentle nature, she could not refuse. The girl asked if she needed to explain again. The servant said that they understood everything the first time. Noxa said that she was very grateful to her sister for accepting her apology. She didn't understand what it was about, but agreed. Tanisa said that there was no need to thank her for such trifles. Noxia could not recognize her sister now. Her sister said that it was time for her to go, because the maid was waiting, and they had important matters to resolve soon. Nokasia saw how her sister's expression had changed. She thought she had made another mistake and disappointed or upset her sister again. That day was full of strange events. But the strangest thing was her sister's new behavior. When Tanaya was left alone with the servant, she asked him to take off his shirt. The boy did not expect such an order. He was confused by the request. Although, remembering the past, there was nothing unusual about it. The girl looked at his back. It was covered in scars and wounds. Tanais realized that almost all of them had been inflicted by her own hand. Although she did not regret it, she felt ashamed and sorry for Askan. She had to use the medicine before it was too late. Askan knelt down. Tanaja finally found a jar of healing ointment. The girl did not immediately understand what the young man was doing, but he replied that she herself had ordered him to undress. And so now a new execution was about to begin. And then she remembered the scene from her dream. There, she was whipping the boy with a whip, leaving deep wounds on his body. They complemented the ones that had already healed on his back. And this time, he also thought that something similar would happen. Tanisa took the jar of ointment. She began to rub it on Askna's back. The boy did not expect such a turn of events. He shrank back. The girl asked him not to move and not to be afraid. The medicine was supposed to protect against infection, so it stung a little. She understood perfectly well that her kindness might not change the boy's attitude toward her. However, saving his life had become her main goal, and on this path, all means were necessary. Kindness toward Asken was one of the steps toward a future in which she would feel comfortable and safe. But something else frightened her. The girl herself was not averse to helping the boy and touching his wounds. Tanasia lost sleep. Once again, all her thoughts were about how to save his life. Perhaps she needed to act on a larger scale. Use her charms to try to protect the country from war. If the clash between the empires did not happen, she might not suffer. Her goal would remain intact, avoiding the total destruction of every member of her clan, and Tanasia herself would remain under the protection of her family. And the commander of the enemy army, Askan, would let her live. Everything was in the girl's hands. If she protected him from being taken prisoner, no one would subject him to cruel experiments. In this way, Tanasia would save the boy and herself from a terrible fate in the coming war. Askan played a decisive role. The main question was how she should use her abilities. At that moment, she had no idea what to do. She was interrupted by her maid. Tanasia asked if everything was all right, and what the maid wanted from her. The girl said that the head of the family wanted to invite his daughter to breakfast. The aristocrat's daughter was confused because she couldn't remember the last time something like this had happened. This was the first time she would see her father since she had entered her body. The girl was nervous because she didn't know what to expect. Olan Brelov had a very good character and was an intelligent and dashing man. It was thanks to his efforts that their family's reputation had risen so high. Despite his business acumen and image as a busy businessman, he was a very kind and caring father to his daughters. So everything should have gone well, without any complications. The main thing for Tanasia was to behave naturally and not make any mistakes. Her father greeted his daughter. The girl thought that her father looked too young. There were rumors about his early marriage to his wife. The man asked his daughter if she had had a busy day. She replied that everything had been fine. She had canceled all her plans so that she could spend more time with him. She had also prepared a gift for her father. Holland looked at the gift. He liked it and praised his daughter for her skillful work. Metella had already told him about his daughter's talent for magic. The man emphasized that Tanasia should think seriously about her future. He would support her endeavors in every way possible and provide her with any resources she needed for her studies. The girl thought that this was the only reason he would have come to her room to talk about it. Nokasia congratulated her sister on her success. Nokasia said that a ball in honor of the prince's successor was to take place soon. It would be very nice if Tanaya wore the necklace her father had given her to the event. But the girl was nervous for a different reason. The main male character, the prince's successor, Roel de Franz Arvin, was to meet with Nokasia. It was then that tender feelings for each other were supposed to arise between them. This would later develop into love in adulthood. Tanasia was a thief, so she made every effort to prevent the two from being together. The girl tried to separate them at any cost. But now she understood that if she did not interfere, their chances of survival would increase several times over. Tanasia offered her sister her necklace. Nokasia asked her to forgive her because she had not said that she wanted to take the jewelry for herself. But her sister reassured her and told her not to worry about it. The girl added that she would help Noxa choose a suitable dress. Tanasia thought that it was not worth standing out from the crowd. This should make the first meeting of the heroes more romantic and memorable. Noxa asked if her sister would really help her choose a dress. She agreed and said that she was always ready to help her sister. Their father was happy that they had such a good relationship. He assured her that she would not have to sacrifice the jewelry. The man ordered another piece of jewelry to be prepared for his second daughter. Nokasia asked her sister when they could start looking for a new dress. Tanasia replied that whenever was convenient for her. Their father added that they would discuss the details over dinner. Askan ran through the dark forest. He tried to escape from something as quickly as possible. However, he did not succeed. A group of men in dark hoods blocked his way. One of them asked if the boy really hoped to escape from them so easily. The stranger told the terrified boy that he would not be able to escape from the Kaluna Empire, either before or after death. Askan had been having these dreams ever since he escaped from the secret laboratory. He couldn't rest properly even after escaping from the enemy country. But the scum who had tormented him did not leave him even in his dreams. It was very difficult to bear. Added to this was the torture he suffered at the hands of his mistress. But when her whims came to an end, he would be forced to return to his former place. And so, there was no point in waiting and putting off his dark business. He remembered how he had tried to leave this family after it became clear who he really was. The only thing that stopped him was that it was difficult for spies from Callan to penetrate the territory of such a prominent noble family. Therefore, at the moment, it was much safer here. During this time, he had to prepare for the road. The boy came to this house only because he saw an opportunity here. Now, he had to wait for the right moment. Askan always pursued his goal and never gave up. Now, he would do the same. The next day, 2 boys met him in the corridor. They asked how he was feeling after getting his new position. After all, now he walked through the palace corridors and didn't even say hello. Surely Askan had forgotten who he was just a short time ago. He decided not to answer, because it was clear that this was a provocation. The guys didn't like that. They called him an arrogant jerk. The only thing that stopped them from further bullying was that he could complain to the housekeeper. But one of Askan's acquaintances couldn't resist and hit him on the head with a key. He warned Tanasia's servant to keep his mouth shut. Askan said he wasn't going to do that. Attacking from behind was low and treacherous. The boy added that it was because of them that he had dirtied his new clothes. The boys did not expect such a turn of events or such words from this young man. Without hesitation, they asked if he really thought that rags made him a nobleman. They continued to mock him. saying that he really hoped to live such a comfortable life for a long time. But the guys were sure that soon he would simply be thrown away like trash. Askin had long been considered insane. Askin remembered what the professor had told him about his ability to destroy everything around him. This could happen if the boy lost control of his abilities. For a long time, he didn't even think about the fact that he could take a life just with the power of his mind. But it was very difficult to control. And if he started to unleash this power, he would not be able to stop and would destroy everything around him. Usually, he didn't get angry and tried to always remain calm. However, sometimes life situations drove him crazy. Askin kept everything inside. Otherwise, everything could end very tragically and terribly for those around him. Tanaja, who appeared out of nowhere, joined the conversation. She addressed the boys who were bullying Askan. The girl asked when she would have to leave her servant to his fate. She added that it is not clothes and status that make a person, but their manners. Tanasia told the boy that she had been forced to look for him due to certain changes in her schedule. But then she witnessed something even more interesting. The bullies began to justify themselves and said that they had meant no harm. Tanasia said that they should apologize not to her, but to Askan. After all, it was him who was injured by the key that was thrown at the young man. Askan replied that nothing terrible had happened and that there was no need to apologize to him. Tanasia said that she had a very bad temper. Therefore, they should not touch what belonged to her. And if the boys decided to continue disobeying her, they would regret it very much. Now they could get out of her sight. When the bullies left, the girl asked Akan how he was feeling. The boy replied that everything was fine and that the wound was not serious. But Tanasia disagreed and said that he belonged to her, so she needed to know everything about his condition. Therefore, the aristocrat ordered him not to even think about getting hurt by anyone, because that would harm her. And this was not a request. It was an order. Now they had to go, because they had very little time. The young man asked where they were going. Of course, Tanasia did not answer him. The only thing Askin understood was that the girl had promised her sister to help her choose a dress for the ball. The young man said that in that case he could treat the wound himself. Tanasia asked what he was talking about, since he needed to find a suit for the formal evening. The young man could not understand what had changed in her behavior. After all, he had previously been afraid to even imagine what could happen to him. The girls looked at Askin in his new outfit together. They understood that the money spent on the boy had not been wasted. Everything that had been bought for him suited him very well. Noxia did not hide her admiration for the young man. Then the three of them moved on to the most difficult stage. They began to choose a dress for Noxia. Tanasia finally found a suitable option. Her sister praised the girl's good taste. Finally, the shopping trip was over, but then they remembered that they hadn't chosen a dress for Tanasia. The girl loved shopping and going to stores, but now they didn't have time for that. One of the women who sewed dresses approached her. She said she had something for the older Brelov. The woman said that she had picked out a set of dresses especially for Tanasia. When the girl looked at the collection, she realized that in her past life, she had been completely guided by Nokasia's tastes, trying to imitate her famous sister even in this. The girl pointed to a dress she really liked. This dress was radically different from all the others the woman had offered. The maid suggested she try it on, but the girl replied that she was sure of her choice regarding the size. The woman promised to pack the purchases quickly. In the meantime, they could wait. The maid promised to bring tea for the two young ladies. Finally, the maid brought cold tea for Tanasia. The aristocrat noticed how nervous the maid was. Tanasia thought that the girl was too tense for a maid who was just supposed to bring tea to the guests. But suddenly, the tray slipped out of the girl's hands. The tea spilled onto her dress. Nokasia ordered someone to bring something to clean the dress. The girl noticed that the hem of the dress was completely wet. As expected, Askan began to wipe the spilled tea from the dress. He asked if the lady had been hurt by the broken pieces of the cup. Tanasia said that everything was fine. She had just spilled it on herself. The boy finally wiped the hem of the dress. He said that the stains would not come out, but the unpleasant feeling would disappear. Tanasia felt strange. She was not used to such treatment from a boy, although for a servant it was quite normal. Until now, she had only seen the cautious side of Askan, and although he was now acting as a loyal servant should, there was something about his behavior that disturbed her. It was very kind of him to come to her aid at such a moment. The girl put her hand on Askan's head, but she quickly took it away and said that she had done so unconsciously. The servant actually seemed very nice to her. She thought she had very strange tastes in men. At that moment, the maid and her mistress stood before the lady and begged her to forgive them for their behavior. The woman believed that it was all her fault, as she had not trained her staff properly. Tanazia asked if everything would end with the usual apologies. The woman assured her that everything would be compensated. She just needed to let her know what she wanted. Tanazia said that they would pay for the cleaning of the dress and shoes, and if the stain on the dress could not be removed, they would send a new one free of charge. The salon manager replied that this was not even up for discussion. She asked if there would be any punishment, like last time. The girl did not understand. The manager reminded her that last time the culprit had been whipped. Should they do that again today? Now Tanasia understood everything. Why the girl who brought the tea was shaking so much. The poor thing was just very scared and nervous about it. Of course, Tanasia's current personality was not a gift, but the past Tanasia used to beat people and mock them. No one would have thought that she personally beat the servants who catered to her every whim. Of course, she had to atone for her sins. After all, she was now in a very difficult position. Her behavior had to change imperceptibly in the opposite direction. She wondered what Askan was thinking at that moment, and what had happened to Noxia, who was frozen in anticipation of her sister's decision. Was the situation so familiar to them that they already knew her decision and reaction? Deep down, she wanted to say that she hadn't treated the servants that way, but it wasn't worth doing. A number of reasons prevented her from making such a confession. Tanasia asked the woman not to apologize and not to say too much. According to the lady, there would be no punishment today. She also asked if there were any people left whom she had punished earlier. The housekeeper assured her that there were none. After all, measures were taken immediately after their punishment. Tanasia said that this would no longer be necessary. Everyone could be returned to their jobs and compensated. Therefore, they did not need to pay for the cleaning of the dress and other procedures. This time, she would take care of it herself. The shopkeeper's reaction was ambiguous. The woman could not believe what Tanasia was telling her. The girl herself understood that she would have to get used to such a reaction after the actions and orders of her former mistress. People were not ready for such changes. The shopkeeper and all the servants expressed their gratitude to the young Lady Brelov. They were ready to see her in the shop and would always be at her service. Noxia did not recognize her sister, and the girl, the servant, could not believe her luck. She would not be punished or fired. The maid wondered what could have happened to make the once strict Tanasia Brelov take pity on her and refuse to punish her, as she had done in the past. Too many people had paid for their carelessness. The housekeeper said that they could not possibly understand what aristocrats were thinking. Perhaps something good had happened to Lady Brelov today. Everyone had seen how that young man had rushed to her, but the change was too sudden. The girls arrived home. Tanasia said she would not get out of the carriage and wanted to take another ride. Nokasia thanked her for her help and went to her room. The girl thought about what she had done in her past life, why everyone was so afraid of her. Among all her bad and evil deeds, there was not even the slightest thing that could redeem her in the eyes of other people. But among them, there were none that she had done herself. She had to find a way to protect herself from her past sins. Tanasia noticed Askan, who had remained with her in the carriage. She thought she should let him go with Noxia. After all, she needed to focus on reflecting on her actions. But the young man sat silently and gloomily opposite her. The girl asked if he wanted to talk about anything. Askan said that he did not understand her current actions and why she was behaving this way. After all, everyone noticed that it was too strange for her. He was interested in the aristocrat's true intentions and motives. Tanasia wondered what had caused such strange thoughts. Perhaps he liked the way the lady had placed her hand on his head. It was important to be careful at times like this so as not to provoke aggression from the boy. Incidentally, the boy had reacted in a similar way when she had shown him the starry night sky. At first, it seemed that he was not ready for such serious and rapid changes, but that was not the only reason. The girl was not going to give up. The lady realized that she had forgotten one thing that explained why Askin was behaving this way. This detail was very important. In the novel, he was the greatest thief. And now she was looking at an ordinary boy, and that was important. Tanya said that in the future, she would try even harder to do good for Askan. The boy understood the ambiguous meaning of this phrase. The girl was delighted with the effect her words had had. The maids rushed to Noxa. They asked what had happened. Although in their minds, the girls were ready to hear the phrase they already knew. Everyone was sure that Tanisha simply wanted to curry favor by offering to help choose a dress. Nokasia could not understand such a reaction to her sister. The servants continued to say that Lady Nokasia's sister had probably chosen the most hideous dress for her sister. Once again, jealousy was to blame. She ordered them not to speak that way about Tanya. After all, the opposite was true. Her sister had chosen the most beautiful dress the shop had to offer, and the lady did not want to hear anything bad about her sister, no matter what. The girls still didn't believe Noxa. They were all preparing for some kind of meanness from Tanasia, and their mistress was just too kind to say anything bad about Tanasia. Rumors were circulating that she was planning to ruin the ball gown. Noxia could believe the servants' words. More than once, she had found herself in bad situations because of her sister, and often it didn't look like an accident. Tanasia could have done something mean on purpose, but now her sister seemed to have been replaced. Just look at how she reacted when she splashed her with water during training, or how she behaved at the table when talking to her father, or her attitude toward her servant. Even in her choice of dress, she was guided by her sister's best interests. She couldn't remember Tanasia being so kind since the time when her ability to control water had awakened. There was even a chance that they would become close again. Therefore, it was not worth speaking ill of her anymore. Nokasia believed that her sister was trying to change. The servants noticed the change in Bertel's younger sister's mood. Therefore, they resigned themselves to the fact that from now on, they should forget about criticizing Tanasia and her evil and mean intentions towards everyone's beloved younger sister. Tanasia thought about how she was always compared to her younger sister. Everyone around her said that the older Bertel had no chance compared to her talented sister. The words sounded a little hurtful. In addition, they said that all the genes of good aristocratic blood went to the younger sister, while the older one had to be content with what was left over from her younger sister. The maid came to Tanasia. She asked if she was going to make fun of her too. Tanasia took the servant by the hand and pulled her along. She couldn't apologize enough. The lady warned that there would be trouble if the servant dared to shout. It was another strange dream about Tanasia's past life. It seemed as if she had been a maniac. The maid entered Tanya's room. She asked if everything was all right as the lady looked ill. The girl asked if the young lady had had a bad dream. The maid's name was Jaren. She had been serving the Brelov family for a long time. Tanya said she had had a terrible vision. The servant advised her to forget about it, saying it was just a dream. Besides, there was to be a ball at the royal palace that evening, and many wonderful and extraordinary things were to happen. The young lady thought that something significant was indeed going to happen today. Noxia was to meet the crown prince. In the future, this meeting would develop into something more meaningful. What could go wrong and harm her in this line of the novel? She just had to behave quietly and not give any signs to those around her. Tanasia would simply watch Askin and the ball, and everyone present. Such a simple plan should help bring the romance in the novel to life. Tanasia spent too much time preparing for the festivities. The number and duration of the procedures exhausted her. Her desire to go to the ball disappeared on its own. But there was no way to avoid it. She hadn't even left the house yet, and she already wanted to go back. Askin was already waiting for her. He made a pleasant impression as a gentleman. No one would have guessed that he was a simple servant. The young man looked like an aristocrat or a nobleman. Tanasia asked how long he had been waiting for her. The young man said not long. The girl praised Askan's beautiful clothes. He replied that it was all thanks to her. He had simply put on the clothes she had bought for him. The lady replied that the clothes only emphasized his pleasant appearance. The young man's beauty shone even more. Tanaja told him not to pretend that no one had ever complimented him on his appearance and beauty. Askan said that the lady was very straightforward and did not think twice before speaking. Nokasha jumped out of the carriage that had just pulled up beside the couple. She made it clear that she had been waiting a long time to see her sister and had something to tell her. It was strange that they usually traveled separately, but this time was supposed to be special. Tanasia said that there was no point in traveling separately. After all, they were sisters from such a noble and powerful family. It would be strange to go to the royal ball separately. It would give rise to new gossip. The ladies and gentlemen present talked about the Brell sisters who had entered the hall. Rumors and lies about these girls spread through the hall. The younger one was called the Light, and the older one was called the Shadow. This reminded Tanaja of a dream she had seen that night. Now she understood why Tanasia had traveled in a separate carriage. It seemed that the guests deliberately began to whisper when Tanasia was nearby, or passing by them. This was very upsetting, but she could not show weakness. The girl understood that she needed to suggest to Noxia that she go for a walk alone, because that way she could meet the prince sooner. Tanasia said that she needed to go out onto the balcony, and her sister could walk around the hall and meet someone. The young lady wanted something to drink to clear her head, and it was finally time to leave Askan alone. After all, it would be very suspicious if she kept her servant so close. She ordered him to stay and wait for her. The boy was left alone. He heard the girls whispering about the older Brell sister's ugly appearance. They even noticed Tanasia's grim expression. It was as if she was very angry at the whole world. People were saying that all the extraordinary abilities had gone to Noxa. Tanasia even copied her sister by wearing similar jewelry. No one even thought that the ugly older sister had given it to her younger sister herself. No one understood why she continued to copy such insignificant things. Such things were said by the cream of royal society. Askan couldn't understand why people with such prospects before them wasted part of their lives. Meanwhile, he remembered how scientists who planned to conduct experiments on children in the future spoke about him and others like him, the orphans. No one cared if these children died. After all, everything was being done for the good of the country and society. The boy saw Tanasia explaining to someone that they shouldn't spread bad rumors about her, and when she found out that someone had tried to disobey her, they would be in big trouble. It didn't matter who had said those nasty things about her. Askan and the girl were left alone. She suggested they leave the hall and go for a walk in the garden. She needed to calm down a little. Otherwise, she might lose control and become the real Tanasia. Askan asked the girl if she really wanted to tear apart anyone who dared to talk about her or spread nasty rumors. The lady assured him that she would definitely not do that. The servant asked if it was a lie then. Tanasia replied that it was not a lie, but a warning. After all, some people only understand harsh language and find it difficult to behave like real people and not stick their noses into other people's business. The young lady asked if Askan was really afraid of her. The boy's answer stunned her. He was certain that his mistress was capable of such a thing. The girl said that he had a gift for taking away his interlocutor's words and speech. She asked her servant how he liked the ball and whether he enjoyed being there. Askan said that the atmosphere was rather depressing. He didn't see anything special in such events. Tanasia hoped that the ball would impress her servant, which is why she took him with her. He could have just lied. The boy thought that a strange situation had arisen. After all, the eldest daughter of the Brelov family, who had always caused problems at home, had actually become the object of ridicule for the other nobles at this ball. In aristocratic society, only the strong are loved. The weak were usually simply trampled underfoot. And at this stage, Tanasia belonged to the weak. But when the girl unexpectedly resisted all those who dared to mock her, her position changed for the better. It seemed that her words had touched his pursuers as well. At that moment, Askan felt something unusual. He even got a certain pleasure from the way his mistress spoke to many nobles and aristocrats. They didn't even dare to contradict her. He didn't like the place. However, this situation completely satisfied him. He was stunned by his mistress's display of strength. There was something unusual about it, something attractive and primal. Tanisha heard voices. She grabbed Askin and threw him to the ground. The young lady ordered him to be quiet so as not to give themselves away. The voices were getting closer and louder. Two men were talking. A fragment of the conversation indicated that the strangers were talking about the Brelov family. One of the men said that he was not going to discuss the problems within that family. Tanisha managed to see that one of the men was red-haired, so it was the prince himself, the heir to the throne. His friend said that his friendship with Lady Brelov would be useful in the future. The girl realized that this was one of the characters from The Beloved Saint, Prince Roll. His companion was his loyal vassal, Rygald, to whom the prince said that today they had no time for games and trifles. His true desire was to make the Arvan Empire the most powerful state, instilling fear and respect in each of its enemies. Rygald said that in that case, it was essential to enlist the support of the Brelov family. The prince replied that he did not want to be around Lady Brelov on his birthday and waste time fawning over her. Tanazia realized that she must not reveal her presence under any circumstances. After all, she had overheard the conversation between the ruler and his vassal, and the content of the conversation could affect the relationship between the prince and the Brelov family. Askin and Tanazia were already quietly preparing to leave when Noxia approached them. She was happy to see her sister and asked what she was doing there. The older sister could no longer change anything or silence the darling of the public. The prince and his servant thought that no one should leave the banquet hall and wander around the garden at such an hour. They both looked at the overgrown bushes, from behind which they heard noises and voices. It was necessary to beware of spies and agents. Nokasia greeted Prince Reynold. She introduced herself and her older sister. Both were descendants of the glorious Brel family. When Nokasia did not find her sister in the hall, she went to look for her in the garden. The prince said that they might have overheard a conversation that could be interpreted quite differently than it seemed at first glance. It seemed as if the future monarch was justifying himself to the girl. Nokasia replied that she hadn't heard anything. She reminded him that girls her age no longer played such games. But she thought she heard something about the prince not wanting to hang around someone. Tanisha couldn't understand why her sister was saying this. After all, it was difficult to imagine the consequences of such words. Nokasia said she was sorry, but it was time for her and her sister to return to the other guests. Once again, the girl congratulated the boy on his birthday and left with her sister. The prince did not know what to say. His plan was about to be revealed. Tanisha, in turn, thought it was a disaster. She had planned to bring the couple together and watch from the sidelines as their meeting ended in strong, lasting love. But now that was impossible. Nokasia couldn't believe that the prince was capable of saying such nonsense. Tanisha asked if everything was okay with her sister. The girl replied that earlier many guests had approached her and tried to say nonsense about her sister. This made her very angry. Her younger sister said that she had become very angry, broken a glass, and left. She was very worried about Tanisha. Now it was clear why her sister had reacted so strongly to Roel's words. Tanisha was grateful for her concern. They couldn't let their relationship fall apart or not happen at all. Tanisha said that maybe they had misunderstood each other and confused something. The younger sister looked at her sister. She was confused about what they wanted to hear from her. Tanisha said that the prince was very concerned about the future. Nokasia and the Brel family were supposed to play a leading role in his plans. In order for the empire to become stronger, ties between the noble families and the monarch had to be maintained. But even this was difficult to achieve. After all, each family considered itself superior to its aristocratic acquaintances, and everyone emphasized their uniqueness in their own way. Nokasia said that the prince's gaze did not bode well. Her older sister said that one should not judge a person with ambitions like Reynolds based on trifles heard by chance and taken out of context. Besides, he had been a genius since childhood. From the age of 5, the prince had been fencing and had achieved remarkable success. His strategic thinking played a big role in his plans for the throne. No aristocrat or nobleman had ever been able to defeat him in verbal battles. In addition, he was very handsome. His eyes were simply beautiful, and his lips resembled the petals of a beautiful flower blooming in early spring. He only had to glance at the ladies of the capital for them to fall head over heels in love with him. Nokusia replied that she had heard all the rumors about him. Tanasia said that in that case, her sister should know about the great future that awaited this young man. He had almost everything, and such a person could not help but have huge ambitions. Nokasia asked if she liked His Majesty that much. Her older sister said she didn't feel anything like that. She just said that her younger sister shouldn't avoid him and should respond positively to his advances. The younger sister said that if that was what was required, she was prepared to do anything for the sake of her family. Tanasia said that it would be best for everyone. Therefore, it was important to hurry, as the prince might think badly of their behavior. Miss Tiara approached the girls. Nokasia was not thrilled with this company. Her friend asked her to demonstrate her power over water to her younger sister. A lot of people were waiting for this. After hearing this, Tanasia remembered the plot of the novel. The bond between Roel and Nokusia did not form by chance. It was all the fault of a second-rate thief from the novel. This person wanted to humiliate the younger Brelov, and during the demonstration of abilities, she deliberately threw a firecracker. Noxia was very frightened by the loud explosion during the performance. After that, she splashed water in all directions, and it got on the guests. And the one who protected Noxia herself from the water was Prince Roel. Tanasia planned to watch the romantic scene, but if the plan failed and everything deviated from the script, she would simply not be able to influence the future. And her life depended on it. Therefore, the girl suggested that her younger sister talk to the prince first, and then start the performance. Tiara said that everyone was already waiting, and the prince would come to the hall anyway, because he had also heard about the upcoming performance or demonstration of abilities. Nokasia said that Lady Tiara was right, and that they should return. They would talk in the hall. Tanasha agreed. She told Nokasia to return to the hall. She would come a little later. She had one important thing to do. The girl turned to Askan and asked him to find Lady Krisha in the hall and tell her that Tanasia was waiting for her. Leanna and Tanasia were once united by their hatred of Nokasia. Now was the time to enlist the support of an ally who was unaware of his role in Tanasia's future plans, and Tara was already preparing to use the gun. The villain would be assisted by her servant. Therefore, it was necessary to buy time and warn everyone, and prevent something terrible from happening. The young lady asked Askan if he remembered the lady who often visited their estate and stayed with them. The girl asked him to keep the young lady in one place, no matter what it took. Their future depended on it. The young man replied that everything would be done. Tanasia asked, not ordered. The servant was surprised by such manners. He replied that he would do everything possible to achieve this. Now, all that remained for Tanasia was to find the prince and talk to him. He had to turn his attention to Nuxa and take an interest in her company. The girl hoped that her plan would succeed. Tanasia hoped until the very last moment that everything would go as planned. However, this time she was wrong on all fronts. A minute before it happened, she was looking for the prince everywhere. He was not where he was supposed to be according to the plot. The girl thought that in this world, the plot could change regardless of the circumstances. Tanasia approached the group where the prince was. The monarch's companions recognized her as Brelov's older sister. That was enough to interest Roel. The prince asked if something important had brought her to him. The young lady said that a rather unpleasant situation had recently arisen between them. She intended to discuss it. The prince was delighted, as he now had the opportunity to explain himself. He suggested that the three of them talk together with Noxia. They set off in search of the girl. The younger Brelov's sister had already begun to show her abilities. Everyone around her was delighted and behaved like children at the circus. Askan carried out the hostess's task. In that case, Noxia would not be embarrassed in public. The prince was impressed by his younger sister's water magic. He watched her closely, The incident in the garden had to be forgotten and worked out. But in the crowd, Tanasia saw a servant with a clapper in his hands. The girl apologized to the prince, but she had to leave urgently on business. The prince said that he did not mind and would watch the performance, as he found it interesting. Tanaya suggested that they stay close together, as she had a bad feeling. The servant was already preparing to use the club, but Leani was not there, and Roel was too far away from Nokisia. The lady suggested that she stand in front of her. The young lady understood that she needed to stand closer to her sister in order to be able to protect her from the advances of her sworn enemy's servant. There were only seconds left before the clapper was used, and only a few meters for the prince to cover Noxia. But the plan failed. The girl was so nervous that her hands were shaking. The prince, who was completely soaked, said that it was actually well thought out. After all, such a coincidence was hard to imagine. Tanasia said that she was just scared. Roel said that even 10 mouths would not be enough for him to forgive her for such an act. It was worth thinking about how to punish the wayward girl. He would never believe Tanasia's excuses. Novsia hurried to her sister and the prince. The younger sister accused the prince of not believing that it was an accident. Roel was offended because they thought he was a complete fool if they thought he would believe their words. He emphasized that the sisters' teamwork was simply impressive. First, one of them led him closer to the scene. Then, she pushed him in the back, and the other one released the water. It was a very well-coordinated and clever plan. Nokasia said that words without proof were lies. The prince said that the victim of the conspiracy was standing right in front of them. What else was needed to prove his innocence? Tanasia asked to speak. She said that the prince had simply misunderstood her sister. The girl wanted to improve the situation. However, the prince and Nokasia unanimously declared that she should not interfere in the conversation at that moment. They had to come to a consensus themselves. The older sister thought that perhaps this seemingly unsuccessful action would bring the prince and Nokasia even closer together. But suddenly, Tanasia remembered that Askan was still not in the hall. The lady to whom she had sent him was also absent, and her servant had taken advantage of the opportunity to disrupt the demonstration. The girl asked if anyone had seen her servant. No one had seen either Krishi or Askana. The girl thought about it. She even began to worry a little. Tanasia asked if anything unusual had happened recently. One of the servants said that there had been some commotion recently. Finally, Askana found her mistress behind the door of one of the rooms. Behind the door, someone was shouting loudly and promising that he would not get away with it. The girl realized that Lady Krisha was locked in there. But it was already too late. Askan said that she had ordered him to keep the lady there at any cost, so he couldn't think of anything more original. Tanasia asked how he managed to get her in there. The boy said that he had lied and said that an important person was waiting for the lady. Tanasia asked if he had been standing there guarding the door the whole time. The boy replied affirmatively. After all, the time had not been specified, and the task was right in front of him. But he could hardly deal with the consequences, so he waited for his mistress. The young man asked if he had done everything correctly, or if he had made a mistake. His mistress praised him for his initiative. She was impressed by how thoroughly the servant had carried out all her orders and instructions. He said that this was his first time doing something like this. There was a scream and loud noises from behind the door. The young man said that Lady Krisha had started throwing things at the door, trying to escape from her confinement. They couldn't keep her there any longer. They had to let her out. Tanasia knocked on the door and said it was her. Liana did not expect her friend to do this to her. When the elder Brelov entered the room, Lady Krisha was very angry. She was angry at the servant for locking her in the room. Lady Tanasia asked her not to yell at her servant because she was the one who told him to lock her friend in. The lady asked why she did that. Tanasia said she just wanted to surprise her friend, but she got stuck in the banquet hall. But Lady Krisha said she didn't believe a word Tanasia said. After all, her friend knew exactly what she had planned for today. Did she really think she was stupid enough to believe such nonsense? The elder Brelov asked everyone to calm down because the fireworks had been a success. However, Tanasia also had a question. Why did the firecracker go off before the signal? Krisha said that she had ordered it to be set off even if there was no signal. That way, she was sure that her plan would come to fruition. Tanasia laughed. She simply couldn't believe that her friend didn't trust her completely. Although they had devised and tried to implement many cunning and devious plans in their past life, and in the book, the young lady suggested returning to the hall. But Krigg said that she would not do so yet, as she had things to do now, so she would join them later. When Tanasia and her servant left, the girl activated her power. It was like a small whirlwind on her hand. It was this power that made her hate Noxa. She had an ability similar to that of the younger Brelov, but her level of mastery was an order of magnitude lower, so no one paid any attention to her, and she remained on the sidelines. Even her relatives and her entire clan were not interested in Krisha's power. After all, she was a nobody compared to the famous and popular Noxia, who was beloved by the nobility and aristocracy. If it weren't for Noxia, her family would have recognized her, but as it was, her plans were doomed to fail. The girl thought about how her sister, Tanasia, hated Nokia even more. The reason for this was probably the blood ties between them. But now it was time for her to pay for her actions. She had betrayed Krisha and her hopes. Tanasia sat in her room. After that incident, she fully realized one thing. Relationships between people are so complex and difficult that the slightest deviation from the norm can cause a turn in a completely unexpected direction. Because she did not behave as she was supposed to in the original story, Noxa did not follow her out onto the street. And Roll ended up too far away from the main scene. Even Leana Krisha began to openly show that she did not trust her. In fact, there were so many variables in the world that people did not trust each other. To prevent the outbreak of war with the Kalima Empire, something more reliable than chance encounters and relationships between people was needed. A maid interrupted her thoughts. The girl informed her that Tanasia's tutor had arrived. The young lady said that she was very tired today and had not planned on having a lesson. However, she still let the teacher into the room. The woman entered with a pile of books that she was carrying on a cart. Tanasia asked what they were. The woman replied that they were materials to help her choose a profession. The Duke himself had ordered her to help with this. Tanasia's father provided financial assistance to the teacher. But the girl was more interested in the deadline by which she had to work through the list of literature. The woman promised that they would have enough time to master the material. The tutor began a conversation with Tanamya. She asked the girl what she liked before. Were there any specific questions that interested her and required more attention than the others? Tanamya replied that she hadn't noticed anything like that. The woman was confused. She showed her all the materials she had brought with her. But one book caught the girl's interest. The teacher said it was a manual on magical engineering. The lady asked what kind of subject it was, but the mentor said she had her doubts. She didn't think it would be suitable for the girl. So she decided on her own to remove it from the recommendations for the young girl. After all, it was a very complex and partially prohibited subject. According to her, magical engineering was aimed at creating magical weapons, developing magical methods of warfare, and preparing for combat using magical artifacts by each of the warring parties. In general, this field dealt with the magical aspects of warfare and touched on destruction and annihilation, which was not appropriate to teach a young girl. But Tanasia said that her choice was final. The tutor was surprised and confused. The girl insisted that she would study magical engineering. It was this field that interested her and attracted her attention. It was also her last hope for her life, for its preservation and protection from future attacks. As long as Askan was with the Brel family, he couldn't do anything to her. And while he was here, the Kala Empire's experiments were unsuccessful. The creation of weapons from humans had to be stopped and not allowed to progress, preserving peace. But even if everything did not go well, the Kala Empire would still start military action against their kingdom. And by that time, she would have had time to develop weapons to counter the aggression of their warlike neighbor. The teacher tried to dissuade the girl from this path. She said that this field was not very popular. Therefore, she could not recommend it to a young girl, the heiress of a distinguished family. Tanaja said that she would study this field anyway, even if it was not popular at all. She wanted to use it to her advantage, which no one else should know about. and her intentions were more than serious. The lady asked if they could start studying this field right away. The tutor said that it would be difficult to start learning this subject today because she was not an expert in this field. It would be better to wait for a qualified person to start. Tanosha replied that they should look for the most suitable specialist. The teacher was impressed by her students' determination and persistence, especially in a time of war and destruction. This was not befitting the heiress of a distinguished aristocratic family.